Uh, Representative, do you have any coyotes in your area?
Yes, we have coyotes in the area where I live.
Are they overpopulated there?
I don't, I don't know if there's an overpopulation. I know there's a healthy population. We see them along the bike path where I live. We see them in the forest preserve near my community. I've seen them in my yard in the past. I know that there are coyotes all over the state, and they're part of the ecosystem. They're native to our state, and they're part of the web of life.
So I see that this is an initiative of someone from California. Have you talked to DNR about this?
This is an initiative of the Illinois Humane Society.
So have you talked to DNR about this?
Yes, I've had several conversations with the
Are they
Department of
supportive?
Natural Resources. They are neutral on the bill.
They're neutral.
Yes.
So are you saying you don't respect their ability to manage the wildlife resource in Illinois?
I do. I do respect their ability, and these contests are not run through the Department of Natural Resources. They're not managed by the Department of Natural Resources. They're not authorized by the Department of Natural Resources. And they're not recognized as an official means of managing wildlife populations. That's part of the impetus for introducing this legislation. There's no scientific basis in these contests having any positive impact on the populations of wildlife, either preserving them or managing them or addressing some of the issues that Leader Meyer just mentioned in his remarks. And there's nothing in this legislation that would prohibit the Department of Natural Resources from managing wildlife populations so that they are not causing problems with private property or equipment damage that was described. This bill does not address that. It does not take away the ability of government or conservation organizations from managing wildlife populations. All this legislation does is prohibit these killing contests that encourage mass slaughter of animals for cash prizes. That's all that this legislation does. Hunting would still be allowed under this legislation. Gatherings of people hunting together, to take fur-bearing animals would still be allowed under this legislation. Fundraisers would still be allowed under this legislation. The only thing that it bans is the cash prize element for the mass killing of fur-bearing animals.
So let me get this correct. You're saying that if there is no cash prize, then they can still have these competitions?
Correct.
Okay. Do you know if there's any rules or regulations that are being broken during these competitions?
You'd have to clarify what you mean by rules or regulations.
Any of the DNR's wildlife rules?
Well, as I said, DNR does not manage, license, authorize these contests. These contests are operating outside of any type of regulatory framework.
But they're during the season and with the DNR rules and regulations, the pamphlet they put out annually.
There are no rules or regulations around these contests.
For normal harvest of wildlife, there are rules and regulations, and they follow those rules and regulations. Do you disagree with that?
Well, this would not change those rules or regulations. All this legislation does is ban these contests for cash prizes.
So as long as there's no cash prize for the individuals, then they can continue what they're doing currently?
This legislation does not change any other hunting regulation that exists under state law. Correct.
Yeah, well, that's not what our analysis shows. And for instance, and Charlie mentioned it, or Representative Meyer mentioned the benefit of being provided to local organizations. The Squirrel Bowl, which happens to happen in be conducted down in Carlinville every year, started in 2016. In the first year, they took in $1,400. They support Operation or Project Third Day, which is over 900 needy kids within the local area. This past year, they took in over $203,000 at that competition. It's 2 days. It's two-man teams, sons, mothers and daughters, fathers and sons, brothers and sisters that compete with this. There's no cash involved, but they raise $203,000 this year. They also support HUA, which is Healing Outside of a Hospital for Veterans, Special Ops Wounded Warriors, SAO, HAVA, which is Honored American Veterans Afield, and these are all done with this program that would be eliminated with this bill.
This bill would not end fundraising for these organizations. It eliminates the cash prize to a person, an individual who killed the most, coyotes, squirrels, fur-bearing animals as defined by the legislation, as part of that contest. This doesn't eliminate the ability to hold an event that raises money for an organization.
So you're saying, okay, so right now, the local farm bureaus pay for coontails, which means that local FFA chapters and other individuals are going out and harvesting coons and turn them in, and they're getting paid for it. Last year it was $5 a tail, but they ran out of money, so this year it was $2 a tail. So would that be eliminated with this?
If it's a contest for cash prizes, yes, that would be eliminated.
It's not a contest. It's a way to manage the overpopulation of in this case coons, but it also does it for coyotes.
Well, I guess if it's not a killing contest for cash prizes, then it would not be affected by this bill.
So are you saying it's strictly a cash prize? What about trophies that they get with this?
It would be a prize that has a monetary value.
So if they get trophies, then you're saying that would not be a valid event then? That this legislation would restrict that?
The way that the bill is very pretty straightforward and rather brief. The way that the language was written is that fur-bearing mammal killing contests are prohibited under, notwithstanding any other provision of law, a person shall not organize, sponsor, promote, conduct, or participate in any contest, organized competition, tournament, or derby that has the objective of taking any fur-bearing animal as defined in section 1.2G for cash, prizes, or other inducement. So the way that and I'm happy to make this legislative intent, it's a contest for cash or some type of prize that has a monetary value, which in my mind does not apply to a trophy or a certificate or prize that is of nominal value.
I don't think that's what your legislation says, and I don't think that's the way it would be interpreted. But
well, I think that is the intent of the legislation, and for purposes of legislative intent, that is how I am interpreting how this legislation.
So you would say that it's
drafted.
cash value or cash prize only?
A cash prize or a prize of monetary value.
Trophies.
Like, as an example, we've seen these contests where they would, a gun or a weapon or something that has a monetary value has been, part of that. The intent of the legislation is to ban the contests that have, those either cash or something that has monetary value.
So, okay. So are you aware that, I'm sure, that coyotes are predators?
Coyotes are part of our the ecosystem in our state.
But you will acknowledge that they are a predator, and they are at the top of the food chain, and that they have no natural enemies?
I wouldn't. I don't know what the relevance is to this legislation. Coyotes are an important part of our landscape, of our natural resources. They're native to Illinois.
The relevance
and as such,
is
they're important to our ecosystem.
the relevance is that when you have an overpopulation, they have to be controlled somehow, and the only control is human intervention, is by hunting or other means. I happen to have multiple trail cameras. We have deer trail cameras out where we have 6 coyotes in one picture. 6. And coyotes, when they get run in a pack, they stalk animals, they stalk pets, they stalk humans. When my youngest son, who's now 32, was 5, I was out planting trees, and he's about 50 yards away from me. He's 5 years old. And I look up and I see a coyote, and then I see that he's being stalked by 3 coyotes. They won't attack humans, adults, but they will attack children.
Well, this legislation does not prevent someone from protecting their property, from protecting their children, from protecting their pets.
But what this bill does is take away the opportunity for competitions and a way to control that population.
No, it's not. It has been recognized, there have been studies that have been conducted that show that these contests have no bearing and no significant benefit in managing wildlife populations. If anything, they're detrimental because they're not done in a scientific way. They're not managed by wildlife management experts. There's no ecological benefit to these contests. They're done for sport. They're done for entertainment. These contests are not being held because of wildlife population management. And whether or not this bill passes and is signed into law, the Department of Natural Resources will continue to have the ability to manage species that are seen to be overpopulating, creating a nuisance in the environment. People will still be able to defend their property. People will still be able to defend their pets and their children. All of the situations that were described by the representative from Southern Illinois, where I had the privilege of and honor and a great day to tour his farm, he would still be able to manage all of the situations that he describes when this bill is passed. So the fear that has been created around this legislation, I believe, is invalid. It's misleading. It's not relevant. It's a very narrowly defined piece of legislation that merely bans these contests for cash and monetary prizes. That's all this legislation does. If you have a problem with a coyote on your property, you can still shoot that coyote. This does not change that.
Well, I would recommend that we allow the Department of Natural Resources, if they thought this was a problem, that they could bring this forward. And they haven't, and you may say they're neutral, but this was not their initiative, and I would urge a no vote.